Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Good evening to our viewers all around the world. Welcome to Plain Talk. It's a special edition talking to current political leader of the Congress of the People, former minister, former MP. Were you a member of
Yeah,
parliament as well? Former
San
MP
Fernando West.
and for which constituency?
San Fernando West.
I forgot to ask about you being an MP. You have so much. Former chairman of NP, former energy minister, former planning minister, Carolyn Seepersad-Bachan. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Philip. And a special pleasure being here this evening. Let me say a special good evening to the viewing audience. Just to make a quick correction, former Minister of Public Administration, not former Minister of Planning.
Again, I apologize. I'm just trying to get this information out in public space. We had a little technical difficulty. We got an update from our provider for this platform that we use for the show. And just telling those who might be watching, if there's any difficulty at all, we also stream on YouTube. There is a YouTube channel, and you could access that as well, just in case there's any problems. We don't anticipate, but just in case. So, this has been a long time coming. I am going to refer to other interviews that I've had with people who I was trying to get you on the show before them, like a former political leader of the Congress of the People. And as I have you here, I think that it is fair that any issues, points, statements that were made or raised in that interview, that if you wanted to clear anything up or share anything on, you should be allowed to. So I don't know if you followed that interview, and I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to add, but in case you do.
Well, mainly to say, Philip, is that, well, first of all, Philip, it's a pleasure being here. However, you and I don't quite agree on many things. You and I have had so many discussions, and, I don't agree with, your approach to politics. It's different from mine and from the COP, but that is okay. That is accepted. That's your prerogative. Me being here this evening as the political leader of the Congress of the People is to really clarify a number of issues I have heard raised on this particular platform. And I thank you for the opportunity to respond to many of those issues, including issues about the Congress of the People and what we are about. Starting with I know that you have had former members of the COP on this program, and to me, I think there are a lot of things that need correcting. Let me start by saying I know one of the biggest issues has always been our role in the partnership government. I think I've made that very clear that in terms of the partnership government, we've had several interviews. One of them being, that the COP stayed in the partnership government because it was our duty to do so, to ensure that we stood on issues, because yes, we encourage people to vote for the partnership, to become part of this partnership. I always say that what we envisaged was going to be a coalition, and that is not what emerged. What emerged was a partnership with a dominant partner, which is not coalition politics. Having said that, Philip, you know that I still continue to maintain that coalition politics is important to Trinidad and Tobago. Sure, Philip.
But the audience will want me to ask you
Sure.
at this level, how does something emerge? You're trusted with government. You're given control of the highest court in the land. You, the Congress of the People, gave power to the senior partner. It was always yours to take away at any time along the road. So how could we accept that it emerged when there was so much planning that went into it?
Really? Was there a lot of planning? We had a Faizabad Accord, yes. But you see, this is what coalition politics is all about. Coalition politics means equal sharing of power among all parties. But one of the partners ended up with more seats. And people always say, oh, we had the power to do this, that, and the other. That is not quite true. Because if you did leave, they would still be in government today. And you know what? Many of the things that we stood up for, they would have continued with, whether it was the runoff bill, which we voted against, that would have become law. The life sport program would have continued. You know, cabinet ministers would have continued, such as Anna Roberts. It's the COP that stood ground on that, and as a result of that, was able to pressure the cabinet to do so. We don't make it public. We never made those issues public. But what I'm trying to get at is, at the end of the day, whether or not we walked or not walked, it was not going to bring down the government or to
How
stop the
many
government.
how many seats COP had?
COP had 6 seats, and the UNC had 23.
One of those 23 was Pointe-a-Pierre.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a what was that seat?
No,
Was that
one
a
of those seats, that was a UNC seat. Pointe-a-Pierre was a UNC seat.
MSJ ran as UNC?
MSJ ran as COP in Point Fortin and La Brea, those seats.
Why didn't
NJAC
MSJ
ran
run as why didn't MSJ run as MSJ?
at that point in time. MSJ probably felt their symbol was not strong enough to carry it in into a general election. So that is why they use one UNC. They use the UNC symbol in Pointe-a-Pierre. Similarly to NJAC, NJAC ran under the COP for Port of Spain South and in Laventille West. When McKendall Dagger himself ran for a seat, he ran under the COP.
So if you had left, the UNC would still have 23 seats.
They would have continued, yes.
But that's a razor-thin majority, all things considered. If you had voted
Don't you have that majority right now? And the PNM has survived. Don't they have 23 seats? They've survived their 5-year term with 23 seats.
Okay, understood. But it's not just about pulling the government down, though, because you saw it through to the end and you stayed with them to the end. Don't you think the things that they are guilty of has indelibly stained and damaged the Congress of the people because you stayed till the end?
Well, Philip, let me ask you, and I want to get to those points. What do you think, damaged us as a COP? Because I want to tell you as well, there are a number, that a part of COP ideology was part of the partnership government. Even when we talk about laptops for schools, I know you were a former COP member. In fact, I mean, you were running for the COP in 2015. You opened an office and so on. You were going to run for the COP. I remember that as being chairman of the party. And you would recall several times when we had our disputes in the government itself. You and I would have a chat, and I would tell you that because you were quite supportive of the UNC in those days. You were sitting on their platforms in Diego Martin and so on when we were having disputes between the
Carolyn,
COP and the UNC.
I sat
right
on their platform once, just one time, just once.
in Diego Martin, right?
But that only happened anyway. I don't even. It's not.
Yeah, let's
This
not
is
get
not me
down.
being
Let's not.
interviewed. I will take that. I'll take that hit. No
Yeah.
problem. Go.
Yes.
Continue.
No, what I'm saying, let's deal with what the issues are. Okay? Coming back to the point. Wasn't it that, for example, laptops? Do I have raised the issue of you being a former COP member? You would recall from our manifesto of 2007, a lot of the stuff that we had in there ended up in the 2010 manifesto, and we were able to see them through, whether it was laptops for children. You would remember Navi Muradali being very passionate about the Children's Life Fund, which became a reality. You would recall Selby Wilson being because he was in charge of the Economic Development Committee, very strong on the Economic Development Board. That became a reality under the partnership government. So a lot of COP ideology ended up into the government, including the procurement.
Nobody could dispute that. Nobody could dispute that at all. Nobody could dispute that. But I'm saying to you, at a point, and let's say when it started to crack, when live sport happened, and then the situation with the then Attorney General and the PCA Director came into the public space, when things started to really reek, everything that the Congress of the people had set out to have had done was already done. If you had left then, don't you think it would have spoken to integrity as opposed to upholding and enabling what looked more and more as a party out of control?
Which party was out of control?
Well,
Which one you're referring to?
I mean, a government.
No, you see, Well, I think the important issue here is that are we saying that if we had left, I think if we had left, and we have made this point several times, anything that went wrong with that government, anything wrong to this country, COP would have been equally, culpable for those actions, because we put this government in place. And this is why it
Absolutely.
was important. And this is why it was always important to act in the people's interest, the country's interest.
This is not
And
about
this
blame.
is,
It's
no,
not
I hear
about
you,
blame.
but mhm,
It's not about blame. I'm just saying, from a total appearances point of view, looking back, and I'm saying this to you from a political point of view as well, where communication is concerned, where controlling the narrative of how people view the party is concerned.
mhm,
Because
mhm,
the Congress people was supposed to be the moral counterbalance to the UNC. When
right.
Winston Ducarel greeted Kamala at the Pagua celebration that led to the whole rejoining, there were a lot of people in the Congress of the People that was not happy because the Congress of the People had made no distinction between the UNC and the PNM. Now, I have also said that sometimes along the way politically, you're going to have to go to hell for a heavenly cause. And Patrick Manning seemed completely out of control. At this point, he was test driving private jets. He wanted to tear down the museum to make a parking lot for Napa. Some of us had to chain ourselves to the gate of the museum. He wanted to take back President's grounds and assume it into La Fantasy. We had to fight for the smelter project to stop. There was a lot. And Patrick Manning didn't care. He didn't look like he cared or he gave a damn what anybody had to say. So it's understandable that the Congress of the People, looking at what happened in 2007, didn't want to take the chance again in 2010. All of that is understandable. But the Congress of the People knew the animal it was dealing with. It knew Kamala Prasad-Bissessar may have been a new leader. But the ideology of grab and gorge that is the United National Congress didn't change. The personalities in the party didn't change. The organizational structure and all the people behind the scenes, and those people didn't change. Why did the
Philip,
Congress
if
of
I
the
may.
People?
Philip, if I may, and I want to just add this to it, as you're saying that. In 2010, when that decision was taken, let me just start back. It started in 2009. It did not involve the UNC at that point in time. You would recall, because of our philosophy of the whole proportional representation, the diversity of the country, and getting those equal voices, we started something called Grand Consensus. Do you recall that in 2009? That is when we
I,
started to have discussions with TOP, Ashton, Jack himself. Then we also
Ashwajak,
had discussions with, yes, and Ashwa Jack, sorry. Then we had discussions with NJAC because I sat in a forum with NJAC COP in Port of Spain. Then we also had, discussions with the Labour, with the OWTU at the time. At the time, I was on the platform a lot, discussing the issue of the cost overruns of the GOP project at PETROTRIN at that particular point in time. And as a result of that, the coming together of Labour, the coming together of NJAC, their interest groups, the Tobago interests, etc., we started what was called the Grand Consensus. COP always had these discussions with NGOs, and they were always of the view that we had to be that force that will bring people together to unite this nation. I mean, and today that's why I am interested in Better United, as you know, because it's about bringing those voices together. It's not about making anyone superior to the other. Then in 2010, the UNC joined. They joined this, and it was a decision by all the partners, not the COP alone. The COP could have stepped out, but the UNC joined. And again, too, the Faizabad Accord was signed, and everybody felt, well, okay, we were already going into coalition politics. But that is not eventually emerged. Now, during that time, I just want to clarify, even when I became chairman of the COP, you recall the many, many internal disputes that we had. People, I mean, sometimes accuse me of causing confusion in the cabinet and causing confusion for the government, but it's not that. I was just trying, as the COP, representing the COP. We had a very vociferous executive at the time, and they were very concerned about getting the rules of engagement correct, getting your charter correct, so that we could have a more harmonious arrangement between the parties within this coalition to make it function the way it's supposed to function and truly derive the benefits of coalition politics for Trinidad and Tobago. And we started that process. We had the Chairman's Forum, which was the chairman of all parties. I remember Jack Warner was the chairman of the UNC. I was the chairman of the COP and the other chairman, and we would meet and we came up with the rules of engagement midterm, and we came up with the charter and we passed it to each of we all agreed, we signed off on it, and it was now to be passed over to the political leaders for implementation. So it's not to say the thing is, it was important that we see this project through. Now, bear in mind, did you raise your hand, Philip? I didn't notice. Did you?
No.
You wanted to?
No.
Okay.
Continue.
And one of the things that I want to say is that many, many times, yes, you would want to walk out of a government, you would want to leave, but you have to ask yourself every time a decision is being taken, if you are walking out of a government, is because you are seeking the country's interests, not your political party. And many, many times.
Now I could raise my hand. Because everything that you just said, up until a certain point, you are saying that you had a clear idea, a clear vision, and that the Congress of the People had a plan that it allowed the UNC to join into. At what point did that plan fail and UNC took lead? At what point?
When you're saying, you're talking about the Faizabad Accord agreement, the Faizabad Accord? When we started?
At some point, the UNC, my problem always with the arrangement was that it relied on seat allocation, which was, the negotiation for that was terrible to begin with. But it relied on seat allocation and who won what seats. So it was never really a partnership to begin with. It went into government with the UNC straddling everybody's back, hoping to clean their names from what went on with the madness under the Basdeo Pandey UNC and everything that happened with Piarco and all those other things. And it looked like for all the plan that was planned, there was no plan to see it through past an election. All of the planning seemed to have been for the wedding, but there was no planning for the actual marriage.
And that could be correct to what you're saying. We have learned from that. Well, let me just say, the lessons learned is what we have to use. When I came back in as political leader of the party, and just before I go to that point, just to finish the point I was making, at the end of the day, had we walked out as a COP, probably we would have been in a better position to even win the 2015 election. But in accordance with the philosophy of our party, would we have been serving the country's interests? Would we have been protecting? And our philosophy has always been that you must put the country's interests above your political party's interests. So it's not about you strengthening politically your party. Yes, Philip?
So you're saying that you stayed in the government to protect the country from the UNC?
To protect it, to make sure that that whatever happens in government, we could still hold our head high. Because what would have happened? Anything that happened there, when we were not there, we would have been equally culpable for it.
But you see, I want to disagree with you here, because I want to tell you, do you think that translated to the actual public looking on?
Well,
that was the time when the term eater food was coined. That was the time when it looked. No, I'm just saying, Carolyn, this is not about blame. But the people looking on are trying to understand what has been going on in this country with its politics and its governance for all this time. So any conversation that you and I have, let's try to at least get them clearer as to what you were seeing and what took place. And I'm saying that because you stayed.
And if I may, just to stick a pin, just to add what you're saying there, very important point, that we understand what took place, but more than that we understand where the failings were, what were the mistakes, what are the lessons learned, so that we could go forward and make a better future, if you would allow me with that. Yes? Yes,
I know, but you see, our politics is so dirty, and to the public looking on, if you have best intentions and you are going to try to change the way it's actually done, you have a duty of responsibility to keep the public in the loop, because what they are seeing and what you think they're seeing might not be the same thing. And what they were seeing right to the very end, it was getting, there was no positives coming out of that government. Even Parliament had started to eat itself. It didn't make sense. The country was just waiting to be rid of it. Why didn't the Congress and the people, when the whole, when the leaders, the prime minister's overcorrection over Anand Ramlogan took place, when that happened, and the Senate president passed in a rush, you didn't think that at that point in time that there was no saving it?
All right, and I want to deal, I'm not sure which issue you're dealing with there, but let's get to it. But before you go to that, the specific issues, because let's deal with specific examples. I want to remind the viewers here, because as you say, one of the mistakes we made is we weren't very public. And there's a reason for that. You don't take government business and put it in the public domain. You can't be a cabinet minister and putting out into the public domain. It has to be regulated. Today, I am of the view, this is why I'm an advocate for open government, open data. You'll see in our quantum leap, to correct that problem is make all cabinet notes open to the public and all cabinet minutes, unless classified. And there's a process for that. So we never have to deal with that issue again. We could be as open and transparent and not breach our collective responsibility. Yes, Philip.
On that
The second
point,
issue.
is it a law, or did you agree to keep cabinet confidential from the public?
That's because we work with the Westminster system, and that's what we call conventions that we inherited with that system, that you have something called collective responsibility, and you cannot breach that collective responsibility as a cabinet minister. In fact, once you do that, you're supposed to be removed from the cabinet. These are things, you see, I don't believe in breaking rules. I believe in fixing the rules, in modernizing the system, but not breaking rules. And I'm also saying it's not that we are going to say all government business must be open, confidential and sensitive information, but it can be classified, and there's a process under the open data system where you are able to move that classification as it becomes less sensitive. I've been an advocate for that. I have started it even when I was Minister of Public Admin to bring out that whole open data system, just so that we could stop the thing where cabinet ministers cannot reveal to the public things that I feel that should be revealed in the first place. That's the first issue. The second issue you raised, Philip, and I want to raise this because you talk about me in particular. And let me give you a personal experience. When I was campaigning in 2010 for the seat of San Fernando West, I recall many people on the ground raising issues about the partnership and whether or not. And it was one of the first things they said to me. They say, if I know you, Ms. Bachan, you will get vexed and you will walk out of our government and you will leave all of us stranded in here. We will vote, if we vote you in, the next thing, as soon as it starts getting tough and they get a big quarrel, you will run away, you will walk out of that cabinet and leave the country to get catch in the process. If we are voting you, we want to ensure that you stay there, that you fight for everything that you're supposed to fight for, that you keep the government on a steady route. And so I want to deal with these issues that people keep saying that we should have resigned over. And I have no problem if there was an issue that we should have resigned.
We didn't even mention Section 34. Section 34 should have been the moment that you just dropped everything. The Congress of the People, lost integrity when you stayed after Section 34. The Parliament was hijacked. There's no amount of talk anybody can give you in San Fernando West that could justify anybody having to say, we will stay and uphold that. That was a piece of political insanity. That was the
And tell me what...
Go ahead.
What was wrong with Section 34?
What was wrong with Section 34?
34. Why should we have resigned over Section 34? Do you realize today, Philip?
When we learned that a member of Parliament and a government minister with responsibility for that trafficking, that what was agreed to in the lower house to the upper house, Prakash Ramadan, your predecessor and the then Minister of Legal Affairs, who was responsible for the oversight in the parliament, legislative oversight, he said that what came back was a different document and it was changed. When you learned that, didn't you think that this is a corrupt government, corrupt to the core, willing to hijack the parliament and the actual legislature for its own corrupt ends? Didn't you think it was
Well, you see
changing
that?
your party by extension?
I want to understand what that, because if that's what he said, I have a little problem with that. Let me start with by saying Section 34 was good law. I am a lawyer today, and I want to tell you, Philip, what I see going on in the courts of Trinidad and Tobago. Because of that issue, it was very, very good law to stop this nonsense that keeps going on, where people are locked up and put on remand and cannot get justice. Justice delayed is justice denied. I am a lawyer today, and I am frustrated with what goes on in the courtrooms. 1 year will pass, and you cannot get the police to come to court, or you can't get the DPP to come to court. And years after, you're going to find the matter has to be dismissed because of poor evidence. Listen, if it is, it cannot. I was one of them who we wanted a shorter time frame in that Section 34. Now, having said that, Prakash said what? That it went to the Senate. You
It was
passed
changed.
that in the lower house.
What was the
Where was it
schedule?
changed?
What was the schedule that was omitted that would have covered white collar crime?
That is what I want to deal with. There was,
A
I
hole in the
think in the
boat.
schedule, there was a missing part, but listen, we are not experts in every single thing. You would not know how the impact of this would be, this law. When the LRC sends something, this is
But the
like this
DPP
is
said, but the DPP
the
said, the DPP said when he was consulted on Section 34, he pointed that out, that that schedule was missing.
when and who he consulted with. You see, this is what is the problem here. We don't know the stories. We don't know the accurate. He certainly didn't consult with us.
Carolyn, that doesn't
I
help
am not
the
aware.
viewers.
That,
No, but
that is what I'm
Carolyn,
saying. You see,
Carolyn,
Philip,
that
we
is
need to
very
get the facts. Let us get the facts and let us not go away because we have all kinds of stories all over the place with this issue. Let me tell you something. Section 34, yes, if there was an omission, then what we needed to do was correct the omission. The
So why
error
wasn't that
is
done?
that you need.
After the two marches, when the parliament was summoned and they summoned to write a law to repeal the other law, why didn't, and
That's
I
right.
asked that exact day, if you are marching because
Because
one schedule is missing, why not put the schedule in?
one line from a
Why?
schedule,
So
which
why was that
should
not
have
fixed? If it
include
was,
fraudulent.
if Section 34 was really for those children and people that locked in the jail, can't get bail, can't get lawyer, why didn't
Exactly.
that whole parliament fix it
And the
to
exact
keep
law
that good
came
law?
back the other day and it's now law. And it's now law. The exact same law came back. The point is if it was missing this one line and nobody picked it up, whether it is the LRC, the CPC, everybody missed it. How do you want? And what I have a problem with is what you're saying now that went to the Senate and came back. Who changed what in the Senate?
That is what
What would have
Prakash,
changed is there
and
was
that
an
is what Herbert
amendment.
Volney, but that is what Herbert Volney took responsibility for, why he was fired as a minister, why he left to join the ILP, why he was purged from the parliament and caused a St. Joseph by-election. All of that had to do with Section 34.
But the thing about it is, no, there are two different aspects to do it. One is a schedule, the other one was the time limit that was changed. That was what Prakash was referring to. That was amended in the Senate by all the senators, including those on the opposition bench, including the at present Attorney General, Faris Alwari, and including the current Minister of National Security, Stuart Young. They were all on the opposition bench. Okay, so when that is another issue. What I'm dealing with now is the schedule itself. So you have this omission. This was supposed to be, yes, certain ministers have responsibility, the cabinet not responsible for that. And you say, okay, I have checked with the DPP, I've checked with the judiciary, this has gone, because whenever you go to pass a law, whenever you bring a law to cabinet, there's an independent body called the LRC that will do the drafting of that bill based on policy positions advocated by the ministers. That would have gone through the LRC. It came back from the LRC. When it came back from the LRC now, what normally happens is that it's supposed to be tested. It would have gone out for consultation by the DPP and the Chief Justice. What I recall is that if it is, we still don't know because these are allegations. We don't have the evidence, Philip.
But
We don't know.
But the director of public prosecutions is, are you saying that he might be telling an untruth?
I don't know. What I'm saying is, okay, and Herbert Volney took responsibility, and I want to go back to that issue because
What was he fired for?
the COP and Prakash, if you recall a press conference chaired by Prakash Ramada, including us, when the issue came up and we realized, well, wait a second, did the current Minister of Justice carry through with this consultation properly, or was it that he misled the cabinet? And as a consequence of that, we called on him to resign, which the Prime Minister took up, and she did ask him to resign. I support then Prime Minister Carolyn Seepersad-Bachan for removing him from the cabinet because the whatever it is, and he took responsibility. I talk about the schedule, forget the other part with the amendment that came back. That's a different issue. I'm talking about the missing line in the schedule. Okay, if he is taking responsibility, he was supposed to have consulted with the DPP to make sure that there were no adverse impact, there was no adverse effects out of this legislation that we are about to carry to the Parliament to approve. So if it is that the DPP was comfortable, what they do, they take the bill, they will take it and apply it to all the cases that they have, and based on what is coming out of that, they will determine, all right, no, this has a flaw in it. And they would have picked up that flaw. Tell us, wait a second, we have cases that would let go certain cases that are under fraud right now because the schedule is missing that part. The point I'm making, Philip, because I heard you saying that, we should have left, but it was
But,
corrected. It went to
but
the
let me ask you this.
Parliament. The law was
You're saying
repealed.
those
The
things,
minister
but if
accountable was removed from the cabinet. The one who took responsibility, and
when
the
was the
whole
law, why was Section 34 proclaimed on its own, and when was Section 34 proclaimed? Was it proclaimed on a long weekend in the dead of night during the independence celebrations? And if so, why?
Okay, it was. I understand it was dated the 31st of December, if my memory serves me right. Sorry,
It was of
31st
August.
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 It was a long weekend. It was actually the 50th anniversary celebrations. Now, if you want to say somebody actually carried to the president house and get it proclaimed on that day, I don't know if that happened. I don't know if, as a matter of fact, it was going through the course of business because it was approved by the cabinet in early August for proclamation, right? I was not in the country. I remember I was away on holiday for 2 weeks. So I was not aware that it had been approved by the parliament, the cabinet for proclamation. And subsequent to that, I don't know if it is because in the course of business it went from the cabinet to the president's house, and then it was signed. I cannot say. I don't have those facts. You see, and these are the
Okay,
issues I'm trying to
we
say
can wrap
because
this.
it's
We can wrap this up.
yeah.
We
Let's
can
wrap
wrap this
this.
up
But
because it's taking up time. But I'm asking, so you're willing to say that Section 34 was good law that was handled badly in the Parliament?
it was handled badly. It was handled badly. It may have been a misleading. And I say may because we still do not have the facts. I know some people saying that we should have brought, I heard you saying that we should have brought Minister of Justice to court, or he should have been charged on what? You have to have evidence. You have to have some breach of a law that took place. If he misled the cabinet, that's not a breach of law. You see, before you can bring a criminal charge, Philip. And these are the issues that we have to understand. We have to deal with facts. We have too much fake news
Carolyn,
outside there.
you make that statement right there with so much passion, and to the viewers looking on, the small person who thief a pair of sneakers from Gerald Aboud would find themselves in jail. They would find themselves quickly in jail. Why is it so difficult to write laws at the top to protect the public from all of the machinations that took place where this particular, all of the things that you said that went wrong with it, all seems to have been a cluster of poor decisions, a series of bad events. None of it was planned. How was Ish and Steve notified to be out of the guns early o'clock, out of the gates early o'clock to file a motion? Before you could even repeal it, they had their
And we
motion in
don't.
the courts.
And do we know who did that? Do we know anything? Do we have any evidence to say who
But
did that?
you are a lawyer now, you say,
Yes.
presented with that much smoke.
Yeah, but you don't have you could have a smoke, you could have smoke, but you need the root cause, you need the fire, you need the gun.
I
Where
am
is
willing
it?
to
You
stick
can't
up. I am
charge
willing.
people.
I am willing to stick
You
up. I am
see,
willing to
Philip,
stick up in. No,
let
you
me
can
ask
continue
you
if
a
you want, or
question.
we could.
What law do you think we need? I'm open for suggestions. What law should a government, and this is general now, for any government, what law could have been passed to bring people to justice for that incident? What law could have captured them?
An actual misbehavior in public office law, a catch-all that deals with deliberate offenses designed to corrupt the system, to betray trust, to use the system for self-enrichment or the benefit of others. Things like that. There should be some sort of law. We have an integrity commission. We refer everybody to the integrity commission, and it goes there for a media headline. Nothing gets done.
But Philip, what you just said there, you're calling nice charges. This is the problem we have in this country. We have plenty laws. Misbehavior in public office is a charge. But do you
I
know
have
to
been
make that
told by
charge?
criminal attorneys on this show that those charges are not used in the political or governmental level, and it is kept down to the level of police officers and public servants.
No, that's not true. I think I know of a recent case where there was misbehavior in public office. We have done it before. They did it with Tim Gopi Singh. But you know, the problem you're not understanding is that the misbehavior in public office, you must have the evidence. It requires a high threshold to be able to get misbehavior in public office to stick. Now, let me just say, now that you've raised this point, and I think that this is something that we need to address. I mean, there are several other issues. There's corruption in political office. Because you said, you know, the man who steals his sneaker, because there's a law for theft. And if he is caught doing it because he has the evidence in his hands, he has his sneaker in his hands, etc., and you could find out, well, it belonged to this, you know, he's caught red-handed, there's an eyewitness. All right, so you have the evidence to go to court, you have a criminal charge, you have enough evidence that goes beyond reasonable doubt. Okay? When we come to these issues now that we're talking about in corruption, the problem you have with misbehavior in public office, with trust in public office, with corruption in public office is that it's always evidence. Tell me something. I'm amazed to hear the Commissioner of Police saying how many investigations he's going to close. How many have been closed? And were there any culprits? Was anybody held accountable? Was anybody
I
held
think
culpable?
I think we're
Many
closing.
of
I
them
think we're
out in the public.
closing
Why?
gates. I think we're
Why?
closing gates for
Because no
I think we're
evidence.
closing gates for expediency, political and other expediency.
Ex
I think
no, you know why? Because you have no evidence. The police cannot go forward with these things. They cannot lay charges. They cannot go to the
let me
director
draw
of
your
public
reference. Right,
prosecutions.
that happened today. Today, okay. Yesterday, somebody sent me a quotation from a company to the NCRHA for $500,000 for 2 tenths, a signed quotation, a printed quotation where the VAT had to be calculated, so it wasn't a misprint or a mistake. 2 tenths, $8,000 a day, $545,000 VAT inclusive for 1 month's rent. So we put it into the public space and called on the Minister of Health to address this. The head of the NCRHA told the media today that we're wrong, that he receives a lot of quotations and he found that that quotation was too high, so he acted on another quotation. I asked the media, don't you think that it is strange that a company accustomed to doing business with all manner of government agencies was comfortable enough to write a quotation and have its director sign it and serve it on the NCRHA if there was no idea that that was the price they had agreed on? And if the director is saying that they acted on another quotation and went with that supplier, could he share that quotation with the public and the invoice for the other vendor? We deal in Trinidad and Tobago in semantics. We deal in smoke and mirrors in our politics. You say to me that there are enough laws. Where the prosecution? We made a fuss.
Where
I
is
just
the
gave you,
evidence
we made a
gathering?
fuss
We
about
are
the Red
weak
House.
with that. And I want to
Carolyn,
compliment, and as I said, Philip, to you earlier, I don't agree with your style of politics. I don't, and you and I know that, but I compliment you and I applaud you for taking up that matter with the UDCAT and the whole issue of the Red House. That was one of the
Okay,
things
look
I
at
felt.
President's house. When I found out that the cottage behind President's house that's not worth 2 million was renovated for 17 million. That's the fire truck all over again. That's spending $5 million to pull a truck out a ditch that's not worth $500,000. None of it made sense. And to the public looking on, the fact that nobody could find evidence, or that in and of itself is not sufficient evidence that you paid $5 million to pull a fire truck out of a ditch, should itself be evidence.
There are many things. There are many transactions in government which we are all very disturbed about. But we never seem to be able to get the evidence to reach the threshold to be able. This is what always happens, and the matter gets thrown out.
So,
That's the
as a
point I'm
lawyer
getting at.
and a
All right, so
former
let's.
legislator, as a lawyer and a former
Mhm.
legislator,
What can we do going
would,
forward?
no,
What
before we
can
get to that, would you say that our laws, where corruption and the protection of the public from abuse by public office holders are weak or non-existent?
what you just repeat what you just said? I didn't hear you.
Our
Sorry, I missed you.
laws, our
Uh-huh.
corruption laws, our misbehavior laws for public officials are weak or
As a
non-existent. You said it can't make the threshold. That is a lot of work to get it to the point where
It doesn't reach it because we don't have the processes and systems in place. That's the point I'm trying to get at.
who is to blame for that?
Right? And that is always the issue. Even when you go to
58 years of
courts,
parliament. Who's to blame for that? Who
um,
writes those laws? We
it's
write
not the
sneaker
law.
laws.
No, it's not the law that is in problems. It's the processes and systems for gathering evidence that is in problems. That those are the systems that are not kept intact. Let me raise this issue at the same time because I see that we want to go to Parliament. Parliament is a nice showplace, to say we passing a law every single day, and people think that something great is happening. The law by itself cannot stand. The law has to go with systems to operate it. Just the same way you talk about Section 34. The Section 34, that whole bill, that administrative indictable offenses, what we were dealing with in that particular bill was putting in systems in place, because if it is that you were going to go towards removing this backlog, you had to appoint masters of the court, you had to put in new practices, you had to allow for paper committals. All of those things had to happen. That is where you operationalize the law. Passing the law is least of your problems. It's operationalizing the laws. Now let
But
me get back
Carolyn,
to this issue.
just
Sure, go ahead.
operationalizing the law is part and parcel of the law.
No, operationalizing is for the executive. It's the public officers now that have to
But all of
operationalize
that,
laws.
even the courts in Trinidad and Tobago are spoken into existence from a constitution, which is itself a law. All systems are
Huh?
functions of a law. All systems are functions
Right?
of a law. So why
Uh-huh.
aren't we writing proper functional laws where executives and operationalization is concerned? We're writing paper law, but we're not writing systems in place to uphold the law, to make the law functional.
Let me go back to something, and I'll raise two issues here with you tonight. Two examples that I've seen in the public domain, and probably I'll be able to make my point. One of the issues that we keep hearing about is why don't we pass the bail bill? Right? The opposition should support the bail bill. Now, I'm not here to support the opposition or the government. I deal with things objectively and impartially. Why, if you look at what is happening with that bail act, I don't support it. I know Mr. Griffith, the Commissioner of Police, continues every day to advocate for the Parliament to pass that law. I disagree with it. The law by itself has been proven by the Privy Council in other jurisdictions that says it is a breach of your constitutional right to deny bail, to deny a judicial officer the discretion, mainly because we are dealing with the separation of powers, and the judiciary is the only body empowered with the discretion to impose punishment, or any sort of punishment or any sort of infringement of a freedom, your freedom your right to freedom. Okay, when you lock away people, that can only be determined by a judicial officer. The issue is not the law, and this is the point I have had to make to Mr. Griffith before. If you could just get your police officers into the courtroom and bring the evidence, the judicial officer could apply the proper discretion, because the Bail Act is very clear. What are the circumstances that will deny bail? And they're all there. So if you were caught carrying around a weapon of mass destruction and you are able to come, the police will turn up and say, this is the evidence. The judicial officer could take the right decision. But a judicial officer
So,
can't sit there and
but
not take a decision
we
and
spent
deny
150
someone
billion
without
dollars.
somebody making a presentation to that effect. And that is where the problem lies. And you know what? If they would bring the evidence to court, you know what it will do? It will probably start the process properly. That if you have brought proper evidence to deny this person that day, which a judicial officer can apply, then it means you will get the
Then,
case right. The matter will come to court quickly because the evidence is there and the matter
so
can be
then,
determined
so
quickly.
then you've advocated for the Congress of the People 4 times since you're on the show. So I'll tell you a progressive empowerment party law that we hope to pass. 24 hours from arrest to charge or release. 6 months from charge to begin prosecution or release. 3 years for civil matters, 5 years for criminal matters, from prosecution to the culmination of the case or release. Make the judge responsible for case management. Put a timer on every case so that when the judge calls a matter and for the second time his clerk could tell him this police officer is absent, the judge could issue a bench warrant and send for the officer. Why we can't do those things?
They could say they issue it, but who tell you anybody adherent it? They issue it and they will come back and tell you. I have been in a matter right now which says that, well, I don't have ink in the printer to be able to print a witness statement. This is the police, right? For some reason the DPP
Carolyn,
cannot appear.
I like you a
I
lot,
am,
and I am not going to fight. I'm not fight you
I
for
mean,
these because
it is now, let me
neither
tell
of
you
us,
something. Let me
you're
tell
not
you something,
wrong.
Philip.
I just want to say this,
What
you're
we
not wrong.
need to do is get to the root of the problem. I think that is the problem we have in
Absolutely,
this
and we
country.
can't do that in
We
1 hour
skirt
here
it.
tonight. We can't
And
do that
so
in 1 hour here
all I
tonight.
want to say is, let's spend some money on fixing the problem in the police service, that they can properly gather evidence. I have spoken to Mr. Griffith already.
So why
Stop
nobody's
this thing
ever
with police
advocated
officer.
for an internal affairs division for Trinidad and Tobago Police?
We just
We have
need
a
an internal
professional
affairs.
service bureau, a police complaints division, and a police complaints authority, and all 3 together still couldn't clean up what the current PCA chairman calls the biggest gang in Trinidad and Tobago.
But let me just say, Philip, it is not just the police officers at fault. It is the systems they're working with, the archaic processes, the structures they're working in. And I've
And
advocated
we can stick a pin
we
because
could
you and I
go
will
through,
disagree. You and I will
right?
disagree
Because
where
for
system.
life, you cannot bring a police officer to be a prosecutor in a magistrate court. The time has
I
come
could
to
tell
stop that.
you, I tell you this without fear
Bring
of contradiction.
lawyers,
I tell you this
because
without
you
fear of
have,
contradiction. Systems can be put in place, and where systems don't work, systems could be changed. We cannot be 58 years old and still crying about systems.
so
But we
why are
could
we
stick up
resisting?
there. You
Why?
and I could,
Why are we
you and
resisting?
I,
Why are we resisting
why?
changing the systems? Why are we
Because this is
resisting
a
re-engineering
corrupt
the
country.
processes?
Those who benefit from the
So,
corruption, at the highest level have no interest in fixing it. To the public, that
right?
is clear.
So if
So
we
you and I,
want to deal with corruption, let me just say, Philip, we want to deal with corruption, and this is what I want to really raise here this evening. We want to deal with professional behavior in all our public, whether it's the police service, the army, the public service. We need to re-engineer processes and systems. When I was Minister of Public Administration, we started that process, and I want to tell you, technology can do a whole lot. You was asking me about evidence. Here's how you can track evidence. You want to get evidence to go to court with? Put everything. For the last 3 weeks, we've been running a technology series. I think you may have known about it. Use some of the technology to make government open and transparent, where the citizens could track every transaction, where the citizens could become an auditor. There's no need for auditor general, the auditor general to come years after and tell me about omissions and errors, millions and millions of dollars are lost, when that could have been picked up online at the time that it happened. Every transaction, you want to know how we could get misbehavior in public, also want to bring people to justice? Here what? Put everything on a blockchain. Every transaction will be recorded. It cannot be changed. There's only one single version of the truth. And once that is maintained, that evidence could go to court. Nobody have to worry. Every police gun that you have, you always hear about guns ending up in crime. Here what? Every one of them, if they're on a blockchain, you know where they are, who last dispatched it, who owned it, and we will have the evidence. These are the things that this country needs to do now if we want to step into the 21st century and bring us to the level to become corruption free and to be open and transparent and hold governments, not only governments, but every public officer accountable. Body cameras, you name it. But the point I was making earlier, Philip, is you can't be going to court with police officers who do not even understand some of the charges they're laying. They need, and the police service, let me just say this, I'm not talking about spending a whole lot of money. The police service of Trinidad and Tobago have a lot of lawyers. They all graduated with me, and they graduate every year. They have all been called to the bar. Reassign them to this court and process branch and let them handle these matters in court. They would know what to do. Get into the court. Tell the judicial officer is there waiting. I want to know. Give me the evidence so I could deny the bail. But they must follow due process as well. And if you are not
Lazy
happy,
policing. It is lazy policing, and we are encouraging lazy policing. We are putting fines $4, $5, $6, $7, $8, $9,000 for tint and wheels because we want to catch one and say we hit our quota for the day. And it's lazy policing, and the legislation to deny bail is lazy policing, and I agree with you on that. But I want to tell you this. A High Court judge told me under Chief Justice De Labastide, they cleared the backlog completely. That you could have applied for an appeal in the magistrate's court and walk across the corridor and judges were waiting for you to start your appeal one time. Why can't we, the people who have a voice in this country now, you are not in government right now, but you've been there. So you speak with a certain amount of experience as to the failure of the system to work itself. There are a lot of things that you and I wanted to talk about tonight, but every time this conversation comes up, it is going to take a lot because you can't just skirt these issues, as you said, rightfully. Some of these things, the viewers looking on is always my concern. I read their comments and I'm wondering, we have a low information voter in Trinidad and Tobago because nobody takes the time to educate them. I've been doing that for nearly 4 years now. This show, your presence, and your speaking your truth to this is a way of doing that. I want to ask you a question here tonight. Do you think that we have enough politicians in this country that care enough about this country to put aside their personal ego and whatever it is that drives them to work together for a better Trinidad and Tobago, fix all these things that you and I and many of us know that are wrong?
well, to begin with, Philip, I feel there's one of the things that we have a problem with in politics, with politicians, is that I think first and foremost is that there are too many individual agendas. And there's not a country's agenda. This is why when we started as a COP, you would recall, we started with that premise. One is how do we unite this nation and understand how we could work together to solve the problems. Many, 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 many solutions exist outside there. Even from the average citizen, are we willing to listen? The problem we have is that many politicians, when they do go in, political parties themselves, they get carried away in terms of how do I maintain political power? How do I maintain my political interests? And this is one of the issues, and I know I'm one of them. I'm the COP, as the COP, I suffered and I paid the price because I did not agree with that approach. I would stay in my constituency and I would say to people, listen, I am a COP member of parliament. I can't deal with CPEP contract and URP contracts and things like that. And it was not liked. I was a Minister of Energy at the time, and I recall having to tell people in my very first day, Philip, that I went into my constituency, a surprising thing happened. Long lines, and I wanted to know what all these people were doing here, because we go on a Tuesday, as you will recall. And then I found out everybody said, well, you are Minister of Energy, so everybody wants a job in PETROTRIN and NGC. And you have to do it for me because I voted for you. And I had to maintain and mention to them, listen, as your member of parliament, when I sit here in this office, I'm not the Minister of Energy. And when I sit here with you, I'm here to help you to draft the best job CV that you can, to show you how to maintain an interview and how to provide. But I want you to know you have to engage the process, because as COP, we maintain meritocracy. We maintain that we will not corrupt HR systems. And therefore, I cannot now pick up the phone and call anybody or write a letter and demand that you get a job. But here, what I will promise you, I promise you that if when you go for that job interview, you feel at any point in time you were unfairly treated, tell me, and I will come back and I will write that Minister of Energy called Carolyn Seepersad-Bachan, and she will pick it up and make sure that it is dealt with fairly. You see, Philip, the problem we have in this country is that I don't think when people go into government, I must say, having looked on the individual agendas that I see, even in terms of, we have formed a better united. We have been talking about grand consensus building. I'm a firm believer in coalition politics. I feel that is what is required for Trinidad and Tobago for the success, because of how we are made up. We are a diverse society. And if we really want unity, it's a sort of equivalent to the proportional representation system that we advocated for. But are we prepared?
I need to ask you. I need to go right back to the start of what you said. You said national agenda. Who sets the national agenda? From whose perspective is
people.
from whose perspective? To the people in country, to the people in town, to the people at the lowest bottom rung of society, their version of the agenda is different to. I had to go into a video today where a multi-billionaire has encroached on a whole public road to the loss of the people who use the road. And these things, how do you determine what is the national agenda so that you could say politicians are pursuing that? Because to the people on the
I
ground,
agree
all
with you.
politics, to the people on the ground, all politics sound the same. We could bleed, we could cry blood tonight. It doesn't make a difference to people who have been jaded by politicians who have said one thing to campaign and go into that. So you said to me at the start, I let you say it twice, that you disagree with my style. I want to tell you why my style is my style. Because I love you dearly, Carolyn. I think that you have a beautiful style of your own. But I want to tell you this. There is a mass of people outside there that fed up being misled by people putting on airs. I'm not saying that you are, but I'm saying if I try to, it will be clear. So I need to be the voice of the people who have no voice. If I ask you questions tonight about who do you report this person to, who do you report that person to, we will go up and up a chain until we reach a system that doesn't work. And then we make excuses for it, and then Johnny O'Halloran reach in Scarborough, Toronto, and build 3 towers with money.
It's time to fix the system. It is time. You see, Philip, let me
You
just
sound
say
like
this
a
very
pepper.
quickly,
You sound like a pepper
right?
there. They will tell you that.
No,
That's
no,
our
no.
slogan.
No. Let
Just
me
joke.
tell you something, because I want to tell you, even over these last couple of weeks, when people talk, sometimes they say this is like pie in the sky. It is not pie in the sky. It is doable, implementable, and believable. When I came back as a COP leader, I told people, I told my members, if you want me to come back here as leader, it is not business as usual. We must learn from the past. We must learn the mistakes of the past. We must learn the failings, because I don't believe in opening up any new party. I want to tell you that. Many encourage you, go and open a new political party. Why? Because you know what? We end up in a heritage and a PETROTRIN style. You know what? We close down PETROTRIN and we open heritage, and what today happen? Big oil spill. Worse than probably what we've ever had, before. Why? Because the same problems you had in PETROTRIN, you didn't fix it. You open something to hoodwink the nation, to make them feel you're doing something great, and then you carry over all the problems from the old system into the new. What is the sense of doing that? Look at where you are.
How do
Fix
you
those
get
problems.
people? How do you get people to trust that what you are saying, having watched you remain in a government that got tossed out on a heap of allegations of corruption and all manner of wrongdoing, how do you
Mm-hmm.
get people to trust that you are competent and capable and honest? If we say when we speak that this don't work and that don't work, they don't want to hear that, because when we talk to employees, we don't want to hear this can't work that way and that can't work this way. We expect that the people are just saying this, that we expect that the people who elect a public office, that they not come back and cry to us and say we bounce up a problem. They're expecting that the people that they send there will say that this wasn't working and I fixed it. How do they
And I did.
trust?
Yes, for my, let me just talk as Carolyn now, because if I don't know how much time we have left, Philip, but tell me. But as Carolyn,
Well, we're running
that
on
is
past
why
the hour, and it's for as long as you want. Now, if you want to continue, we could continue. I know you have a busy schedule.
right? As Carolyn, this is why I did what I did in the energy sector. You go back and check and you will see my track record speaks for itself. I was always adamant that we wanted to bring back the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. We did that. That was a COP policy. We did that. I was also interested in making sure that when we deal with gas-based projects, it's not no backroom deals that normally used to happen before. It must be open to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It must be open and transparent. We designed an evaluation framework which ensured that you were able to do it objectively and award points for the selection of those projects based on how much emissions you make into the atmosphere, how much employment you generate, how much we go down the value chain to generate more spin-off industries and employ more high-quality jobs, etc. All of those things were done, but it was discontinued, right? When I went into public admin, I took with us again. I don't know if you recognize, you remember, I don't know if you remember in 2007, we used to talk about something called one-stop shop for government services, integrating public services, making it easier for people to access. I went with that mandate into public administration and I did that. I said, we are going to bring out open government. We are going to launch open data, and we did. Open government, Philip, was allowed. We were the first country in this hemisphere, in the Caribbean region, to become part of the open government, to be approved as part of the open government platform, meaning all government policies are open to the public, which people could participate in. Why am I saying all of this? Because let me tell you what I think is doable and implementable here to solve this problem. And this is why the COP launched what is called Making the Quantum Leap. We recognize you will have to skip some generations of technology to get us out from behind the curve and ahead of the curve. If we want to get better governance for this country, we have to prepare to commit to this. And
I
let me
need
tell
to
you
say
what we
something.
prepared to.
I just need to say something for you. Instruct your team, if they're coming to argue on the threads, don't post as COP Secretariat when everybody else is posting with their full names, because it's unfair. People get to be talked differently with anonymity. And we encourage people to speak as themselves, because there's a whole debate going on. And I want to tell you, people loving you. So you're doing it right. But just ask your COP Secretariat people to unmask, because we don't encourage people as fake profiles or hiding behind aliases to engage the other members while they're talking, because it's an open forum for everybody in the world. And I just ask you if you could give them that instruction and carry on, because they're loving you on the threads.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Philip. So this is why I'm saying it is doable and implementable. It's time now that we turn these things into actions. You would recall, Philip, that when we spoke a lot about the new politics, people said that yes, it was sounding good, but one of the failures that we may have had going forward is that we did not implement it. We didn't understand how to implement it. So this is why in making that quantum leap, we have tried to put together a plan of action that brings this to life. You ask about what is that national agenda. That national agenda must be a national development plan that goes way beyond 5 years, that electoral planning cycle. One of the things the IDB and all the multilateral lending agencies will tell you, Trinidad and Tobago is where it is today after billions and billions of dollars have passed through this economy from the energy sector. And you know what? We have not been able to see the benefits of the quality of life that we should be enjoying because of this wastage that takes place every time you start a project. It is stopped in 5 years because it's not your project. For example, I will tell you, my Gold to Diamond project When I say mine, I want to say the public service loved it. We were developing what is called the 21st century public officer, who is accountable, open, transparent, bringing services to the people, online services. That project was stopped. You had a number of young people who were working in something called the Diamond Bus, doing the same thing, opening it up to the public, where you could provide solutions to problems in the public service and we could implement it. You know what? That became, they used to do what they call crowdsourcing. You know, that project won an award, global award, at the what we call the Commonwealth Association of Public Administrators in 2016. Because every 4 years they have this conference. It was won by them. Do you know what happened? Maxi Coffey and his public officers went to the conference, accepted the award, then came back and shut down the unit. Actually shut down the project. I want to know, where is the open government project today? Now I come back to the point. If it is you want the people of Trinidad and Tobago to be part of this national agenda, then everybody must have this national plan. I'm of the view this national plan must be owned, this development plan, being long-term, must be owned by the parliament and not the cabinet. Let the parliament control that on all sides. So every time there's a change in government, it's one plan that you're working with.
But it doesn't.
Go ahead.
But the speaker is appointed by the parliament. If the parliament has a majority, it'll still do it anyway. That's semantics. We're trading the name of the person who's going to take the lead anyway. What should be law is that unless you could prove that there is corruption or fraud or any inequity in a project that has been undertaken by a government, it should continue because public funds have been spent. And if you could find a reason, that should be a law.
No, but this
The
come back
People's
again.
Partnership sat in government, but the People's Partnership sat in government and left Taruba Stadium closed. Whether that is a good thing or a bad thing is for the future to decide. The PNM left, Couva Hospital closed. If we didn't have a pandemic, it would have stayed closed. Look how many HDC projects get stopped. The Red House was 12 years of scaffolding rentals. Shakonia HDC project next to Four Roads Police Station under the People's Partnership, 5 years of scaffolding rental. Victoria Keys, that was built by one administration, another government came into office, awarded $750 million to upgrade an HDC project beyond the people who were supposed to be earmarked for those units.
So you're mixing two issues, Philip, and you need to separate it. You need to separate out the corruption side, which is the execution. There's an execution side, and then there's the development side. The control of the development plan must take place within the parliament, with members of parliament consulting their constituents. And let me ask you, just said there, with the majority and whatever, and they could take control. You know what we need to stop with that? Members of parliament in the lower house cannot be ministers, except for the prime minister and probably one other. Let the members of parliament have a conscience vote. Let them be responsible for consulting with their constituents through an established process, almost like a referendum. They must go out there, and any changes to that development plan must come from their constituents.
But the PNM will say that's lazy politicking. The PNM will say that's because you can't get a majority in the parliament. You're hoping to give people the opportunity to vote with you. And they will say that. The system,
that is empowering people. They could say what they want. They could say what they want. That is empowering people. This is what we need to do in this country. We need to deepen the participatory governance process if we want to get better quality governance. The other issues you are raising, Philip, those are execution issues, which the cabinet now you have to hold to account. And what I'm saying is, in the public service itself, if we put these systems in place, technology based, and I want to say I'm not talking pie in the sky, because if you had listened to our technology series, we had an international speaker, for example, blockchain. We asked him, how long would it take to put that in place? A couple of weeks if you have a digital platform. It is not pie in the sky. And I will tell you, because when I came in as a Minister of Public Administration, it's not a project that I started, but I recall scholarships, we had something called a SATIS system, the Scholarships Administration and system, which was all IT-based, software-based. You could track every application. Today I was mentioning that on our technology forum. It's amazing to me to see the news they carry an article a week ago or two, or probably a week ago, talking. These are things that we don't get to air in the press, but here it is that when they did this investigation, how many scholars did not return to this country? That is money, taxpayers' money lost, did not return to perform their obligatory service. In
But
fact,
Carolyn, we had medical scholars who sat and waited for a full year, couldn't get employment, had to leave. They
and
had
that's
no
a okay.
choice.
But that's a different issue. Let's go back. There are two problems with scholarships. One is if we don't track them properly, they fall off the system, and that's investments lost, and we don't know where they are. There are some who do graduate, they are required to perform a service, they are assigned, but they don't come back, and that's money lost. You're talking a second issue, which is when we bring them back, and I agree with you, which is a system we have changed as well. There are 3 months. If you're not assigned, then you are free to go, because we're supposed to know better. We're supposed to plan better as a government and know that when you're coming back, you're going to graduate next year in June with a mechanical engineering degree. This is where we're going to assign you. So I take that point. I'm not against that. But how many scholars that were lost? Not only taxpayers' money lost, it could be parents' time, even these kids. When we implemented that technology system, here what? No manipulation of scholarships. You would recall the big scandal there was in terms of the award of scholarships. Everything was objective. The system can award points because of the qualifications that you have. If you want to go for a master's, you want to go for a postgraduate degree or scholarship. Even when it comes to the selection committee interviewing you, the selection committee had to enter their scores and say how they were doing. So it became very objective. Now it meant that I can track every scholar. I can become a scholar counselor and advise you whether or not you are performing or you're running into problems. There's a problem here. We need to address this quickly before we lose this student out of the system. Only to find
But
out, I'm amazed here how many waterlog, what was it the article said? Waterlog files, how much people they couldn't find, how much of millions of dollars were lost. What was the problem? I was
but
amazed. So I did inquiries. I'll just finish this point. Did inquiries to find out that this government stopped the status system. You got rid of the technology. I went back to a paper-based system. Why? When you go back to paper-based systems, manual systems, it's an opportunity to be able to manipulate. That is where the corruption comes in. When you have technology, you
Carolyn, the
cannot
corruption.
manipulate.
When we knew the special purpose company set up by Patrick Manning to enter on the tenders board was a good way for corruption, why didn't the People's Partnership remove them? Why did we opt for a more robust and transparent tender system? Why did we go for that? Water. It is a
Did we
progressive
know? We went with
empowerment
the
party.
procurement
It is the
legislation.
progressive
We
empowerment
went with
party that has shown Trinidad and Tobago that we have 100,000 times the water we could ever need. The rivers that were created to wash the fresh water out to the sea, we could put a gate on the end and hold the water. Dry rivers could become wet rivers. The actual flow of the water could power turbines, the power pumps, to drive turbines, the power pumps, and to run the water to put it in the reservoirs. We never have to buy a water tank again in life. We've never had a government in office, Carolyn, that has fixed the simple things. I have been asking for 5 years now for an audit or at least some information on where the money from Lake Asphalt goes. Nobody can help me, not even the Auditor General. I call Lake Asphalt, they transfer me 7 times, and then somebody hang up the phone. The country, the entirety of our country, Carolyn, is broken. And it seems that it was set up broken to facilitate corruption.
It
It
was
is
set up
time now.
because governments continue to want to command the heights of the economy, and that has to stop. We have the view, if you look at the quantum leap, making that quantum leap, Philip, we are talking about taking many of those enterprises and putting it back in private sector hands with proper performance frameworks in place for monitoring and evaluation. There are many, 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 many things that you could put back into communities that will spur these small and medium-sized enterprises. You talk about water problems. We had a meeting about 2 weeks ago as Better United. There's so many solutions to the water problems in this
So
country,
why did
but we
but the
failed to.
People's Partnership, but the solution, the first solution must
Because
be
you
to
know
hold the
why? The
water you have.
solutions are longer, they're longer than 5 years, and nobody wants to go with a project. You see, Philip, one of the problems we have in this country is that the easiest thing to do for a solution is to find a quick fix. so that the people will be able to identify quickly. We
Carolyn,
have
the
to understand
Salcott was not a
people.
quick fix. The Salcott cost this country $500 million a year. We are desalinating the rainwater we send into the sea. We have the water already, we send it into the sea, pulling it back and desalinating it. When all we have to do is hold, treat, distribute.
Well, let me
And
just
that's a
tell you,
simple one. Water fills a hole.
I support the desalination plant. You know why? Because if it wasn't there, Point Lisa will shut down every day for
But
water.
Carolyn, water fills a
It
hole.
will shut down every day for
You
water
could
because
dig a
look at what
1,000
is
foot
going.
hole. All right. Let's
You can't, the distribution system. But you see, Philip, there are other
Carolyn,
solutions
you
to the
can't
problems
say
that
the
we're not dealing
distribution
with.
system when we could build a distribution system like the Romans and the Iraq, the Babylonians built distribution systems that took water over mountains 2,000 years ago. We can't build a normal system that could collect a dam for Point Lisas and put pumps there. Why did we have to desalinate salt water when half the year the country floods? When the public hears you defend things like desalination, when half the year we flood, every 2 years we flood.
And I
Why
agree
are we
with
not
you.
keeping that
While you
water?
bring those dams, we have to get the dams in place. But listen, if you had not put that desalination plant there, let me tell you something. We would have never get the dams. We would never get the distribution system. And your Point Lisas will be shutting down every day, depriving this country of the foreign exchange they need. Without
Qatar,
water, they cannot operate. And
Qatar
I
just
want
built
to
the
say,
world's largest reservoir. The world's largest
yes, and I hear
reservoir.
you.
That's all we needed. We don't need
Okay, so let's just go on. If you
desalination.
want to talk water, let's just talk water. Because I agree, we don't need desalination. But the problem is the systems that we have, we can't seem to get the water to the people.
So what? This
How
is
much
where you and I
water?
disagree. This is where
So
you and I
let me
disagree.
ask,
You
do
blame the
you know how much
systems, and I
water?
say,
How much water is lost? Do you know? I am telling you, you don't even need. Yes, we need dams, but do you know you are producing enough? The water reserves that we have in this country right now is almost equivalent to what you need in terms of demand. You know
Alan,
what happened?
Maraval River could hold
50% of it.
Maraval Reservoir 1,000 times.
Yeah,
Maraval
but what I'm
River, I
saying
have
is,
walked the length of Maraval Reservoir. I've done videos from every step along the way till it reached the mouth this weekend. Gone here, I was down in the river by Movie Town to show
but Philip,
Trinidadians where our water goes. And
let's
it
deal with
goes.
facts. Go back to see some of the articles and the reports that have been written by WASA, and not just WASA, independent experts. You will see the cause of the root problem. Let's get to what is the root problem. The root problem is that you are losing 50% of the water that you extract
Because you're
through
sending
the
water from
distribution
Caroni to
system.
Diego Martin and water from Diego Martin to Sangre Grande. Why we don't
No, you're
decentralize WASA? Why we don't decentralize WASA and make all 41 constituencies responsible for sourcing and distributing their own water? So you don't have to go more
because
than
I've
3 miles.
heard that. Well, I would, before I answer that question, I would say this. Let us do the economics of it first. Because a lot of times we come up with these ideas, we have to determine what is feasible,
But we want to
right? You
spend
have to base it
$1.5
on
billion
data.
just to put meters in place that will take 100 years to pay back for the metering system. And we're going to meter people for dry taps. We
No,
know
I don't
how
think
to
that's
fix
what
these
the
things.
metering. All right, let me just say, Philip, I worked on a metering project when I was a young engineer, when I was in the 80s, when I had now joined the University of the West Indies as a lecturer. Let me just say, the metering is not about that. The metering is like putting in a SCADA system, and there are even more advanced systems now, so we could find
Okay,
where
I
the
have no
leaks
problem with
are.
putting in meters, but put meters in the constituency
Not
when you
in
give the people
meters.
water.
No, you talk about metering at the end. I think what they were talking about is getting an advanced technology system in place so we could find where the leaks are, so we could fix them. The distribution system needs repairs. And if all over the world what they use is
You
technology to be
just
able to
said
isolate.
earlier, you just said earlier that the things that are broken don't necessarily need refixing. What we need are better things. Carolyn, we don't
Yeah,
need to fix an existing system that breaks this badly. If 50% of our distribution could leak, our distribution is our problem. We have
of course
enough
it
river
is.
systems on the east-west corridor. We
So
have enough.
I would deal with
I just
trying
want to
to
say to
get the
you, along
distribution
the east-west
system.
corridor, all of those rivers that take the bounty of rainwater from the hills and wash it to the sea needs to be redirected to holding ponds. You could put
Yes, I agree
in
with that. I agree
prefabricated
with that.
holding ponds every step of the way along a river and hold all the rain. So it could be storming up in the hills at Diego Martin, and by the time you reach Westmoreland, the river dry because the ponds fill
Yeah.
in all along the way.
More than
We
that,
could do those.
what we have in 2007, I don't know if you recall, Philip, we had dealt with that issue, and even we had recommendations which talked about creating those kinds of man-made lakes, like what you see in Florida, and putting them on the hills itself, because you can use it twofold. It can be one, it can be used to retain water so that during the dry season it can be used. Secondly, it can also serve as a recreation. It could serve to improve the
Absolutely.
aesthetics, right? I
Absolutely.
mean, we have talked about even this whole issue
Spot
of
on.
widening river and dredging rivers. I don't agree. If you tell me you go up to what was the place that had the big flooding at the time, way up in the east. If you had put a retention pond before that point, before it got into the river, we wouldn't have that amount of
Okay.
flooding.
You know what? People saying you and I arguing that we agree. So we can stick up in there. We've run
Okay, sure.
longer. We've run longer than you
And
promised to
yes,
give me, and I really
yes, I
appreciate the
agree.
extra time. I really appreciate the extra time, Carolyn. And as I do for all my guests, I want to thank you. I want to especially thank you. Plain Talk seems to give people a bump. It gives the viewers a chance to see people talk frankly on issues, to exchange with them, to have their questions asked. And the people approved of your performance tonight. They enjoyed the show, so we're going to have to invite you back for another episode at some point. I enjoyed the exchange, and I want to give you the opportunity to close and to take as much time as you need for your closing comments.
Well, let me just say a special thank you. As I said, Philip, you and I will not agree, and I really want to appeal to you, Philip, that, that's not the way. If we want to talk about leadership and we want to talk about country first, we have to do things in a diplomatic way. Remember, we are playing role models here for young people of our nation. And I said this to you before when Rowley was able to
Carolyn,
say,
I can't
meet
let
me
you
on
say
the
that to
table.
your time. I can't let you say it to your time. I'm going to have to interrupt you
Right.
here. All the
So, then
people have
that's okay.
seen of our parliament for 58 years is crooks, bandits, and vagabonds, incompetents, and people who
Right.
walk out at the end of 5 years to say this didn't work and that didn't work, and met it so and I left it so. They've not heard somebody say that every single thing in this country could fix. If you elect me to office, I will give you an undated resignation. If you're not happy with it, I will walk. I
And
promise
Philip,
you that
you can say it. You can do that.
the
I'm not
first day of
saying what
office,
is
write
not
me
your
call.
content. No, I'm not talking about your content. I'm talking about the way, the manner. You see, Philip, what I'm
But
trying to
Carolyn, you are
appeal to
not
here this
reaching. You
evening.
spoke about the media tonight, and you get more media than me. In the last
No, I
28 days,
don't.
I got one.
No, no.
You get more
I don't
media
get
than me.
any. I don't get any
Okay,
media. And I
but in
want
the
to say
last
this,
28 days, I got 1.5 million views on social media. So when
and
Newsday
that's fine.
called to ask me, when Newsday called to ask me how I feel about social media being the platform for a COVID-19 election, I said, well, that is an advantage to us because the media blocked us and we had to bloom and blossom on
And I
social
quite
media.
agree. I want to quite agree with you on that. Social media, because without social media, we will have no outlet.
But
I'm amazed
are you
that
reaching
before I
people on social
became
media? Are
media,
you
because
reaching
before
people on
I
social media?
became Well, we are trying as the COP, we are trying, but I could
Plenty
tell you
people
before,
plenty people saw you tonight, and plenty people will see you tomorrow when they run the reruns, and let your people follow this show, and they will tell you, Miss Seepersad-Bachan, you may not like his style, but the public of Trinidad and Tobago welcomes it as a relief because all they've seen for 58 years are people put on jacket and coat and cut their throat. So
well, let me
I
just say,
had to
Philip,
interrupt you. I had to interrupt you
fine, and
from what you
that's
were
your
saying that
view.
we disagree in styles, but you continue
Okay,
with your
and
closing.
that's your view. But if it is, we want leadership, we have to get leadership that is collaborative. We have to get leadership that puts a country's agenda first, the people first. And I think that's one of the things that we are missing among all the leaders of our nation, all the politicians. I must say, I see too many individual agendas. I really hope that people will be able to put their individual agendas up, aside and let us come together as a nation to help the people of Trinidad and Tobago. You see, I'll tell you this, Philip. I personally believe that this country is a paradise. I personally believe this country could make so much strides if only we could get it right. But we have to get the people together with us. And that is why when we were making the quantum leap, we said that the time has come for the people of Trinidad and Tobago to participate in governance, not just leave it to a few people and who you elect alone. You must have that process to allow you to become part of that process, whether it is via technology platforms, whether it is through consultations with your members of parliament. I appeal to every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. Let us make this change going forward. I thank you, Philip, for the opportunity this evening. And to your viewers, a special good night. God bless.
It was our pleasure having you, Carolyn. Thanks very, very much. And that's where we leave it tonight, Trinbago and the world. I want to touch on the issue of style, and these are my closing comments. I hope Carolyn and her technical team are still paying attention, because while I would love to be the most, and we keep using the term Obama, I would love to be the most Obama version of myself. Trinidad is not buying that anymore. We reached a point today in this country where the one thing the public knows for a fact about politicians is that they don't trust them. Carolyn called for people to step up and do the work. 4 years now. 4 years now. I have been doing videos almost every night. This video, actually, this show, is the third video I'm doing for the day. I did a video this morning that got the NCRHA to respond. I did a video this afternoon that has my inbox full of information from Polymer on the road and what access the people of Cocorite really entitled to by the sea. I deal in a special kind of representation politics. We in the Progressive Empowerment Party, and yes, I'm a hard taskmaster. I'll never lie. I'll never deny that. This is not an easy role. This is not an easy road to walk. We've stepped out and aside from the criminals in the contract mafia that have ruined this country. The $3 trillion that has gone missing in Trinidad and Tobago. It's not the sneakers thieves and the corned beef and cricks thieves that took it. It's parliamentarians, politicians, their friends in business, and lawyers and engineers and professionals and people who made all kinds of oaths. So where do we go from here? Do I dress up and put on my best convent girl accent and get you to believe that I'm different to the same? The Congress of the People ran smack dab into the corruption and the brokenness of Trinidad and Tobago and came out of it blaming the corruption and the brokenness, but have not fixed it. A Progressive Empowerment Party will tear down those walls. Carolyn Seepersad-Bachan is a stickler for system, and she's right. And I wish we could work together and this be a perfect world where we all have the ability for things like convention. This is Trinidad and Tobago. We refer to convention, cabinet silence. Vernon de Lima said early in the People's Partnership, vote him as leader of the COP and he will untie cabinet responsibility. The public were crying out for clear, honest, visionary leadership. They wanted strong people who were capable of breaking the criminality. I ask all the time, how did it make sense for us to pay $80 million to Amalgamated Security every year to transport people who between them didn't steal $1 million? So if we had just let them go, we'd have a net gain of $79 million. The $80 million that we spent at Amalgamated, we could have given $10,000 a month to the crooks in the jail and the people that we have on charges, so we believe that, and put them back outside and tell them, listen, don't commit a crime, you lose this $10,000, and still save $40 million. The system is broken, but it's not indelibly broken. Systems are made by people. If all the people in Trinidad and Tobago was to disappear, there'd be no systems because there'd be no people. Systems are made by people. They are operated by people. All systems that exist can change for better systems. And I want to keep using the water system without engaging another technology. We could dig holes in the rivers, all along the path of the rivers. Put in 30-foot, 40-foot, 50-foot deep tanks all along the path of the beds of the existing rivers, and catch and hold every drop of water that falls magically from the sky. Prevent flooding immediately, so you don't need next 5 years of Rohan in his shiny pants and pointy shoes. Because if we catch the water in the rivers and we hold them there, rivers can't break their banks and they can't overflow. And at the end, when the sun comes out and the rainbow in the sky, we could pump all those tanks empty to reservoirs and keep water flowing to everybody's taps 24/7, so they can remove their tanks and pumps and plant flowers or grow bhaji and bodhi in the space where tanks and pumps have been occupying for 58 years. The brokenness of Trinidad and Tobago cannot continue to be excused. We cannot continue to say that there are things in place because things are in place. The Progressive Empowerment Party says undo it and redo it. We have an answer, a plaster for every sore, because we've spoken to the best. We've gone to everybody. Who is the best of the best? And we've asked them, if you needed to fix this, how would you? Take, for instance, schools. When schools are closed, there's no traffic. That should stand to reason. I had to explain to a journalist today what stands to reason means. It stands to reason then that if we zone the schools so that parents don't have to leave Chaguanas to drive to QRC and Diego Martin to drive to presentation, if we zone the schools and made sure all schools function to the same high standard and made all schools prestige schools, children would grow 10 years, we would abolish the child abusing SEA, and we would end traffic just by that one policy. So why hasn't it been done? A timer on court cases, a timer on police charge, arrest to charge to prosecute to convict. We've said put timers, yes, everybody admits that will work. Zero deposit, zero interest for first-time homeowners to buy homes up to $1.5 million will reduce the price of a home. Each $100,000 of mortgage would drop to $466, meaning minimum wage earners would be able to source, find, or build their own homes. Yes, it would work. Bank financial service regulations that dictated to the banks interest must be paid on depositors' funds would force those funds back into the economy as credit, creating essential lifeblood for entrepreneurs, small business, and build back our middle class. That would work. All of these things would work. And yes, there would be obstacles and pitfalls and dams and bureaucracy and log jams. And that's why we need to be strong. And that's why we need to tell the people that no matter what exists, because there are people who benefit from Trinidad not growing food. And there are people who benefit from Trinidad not holding water. $500 million for desalination. How much billions in bottled waters? How much billions in tanks and pumps? All of that is a waste. All we have to do is treat, distribute the water that we get from the sky. There are people who benefit from all the wrongs in society, so they're going to put obstacles. And you can't put prima donnas and people who are focused on the diplomacy of the moment. I am focused on the log and the jam. I want a better Trinidad and Tobago for me to grow old in, for my children to grow up in. That's the only reason I'm in politics. And I plan to stay as honest, as focused, as committed as I am. I would fight friends and family for a better country. I hope that the example that we are sharing politically with others, that they wake up to that too. We could get to a place where people have water in their taps. Every creed and race could find an equal place. You could get your job. Your job could give you an opportunity to own a home. You could afford food. You could raise your family. Public health works. Education works. There's no more traffic with decentralized Port of Spain. We moved the port of Spain, and we've made the city functional again. Because we've taken all the government offices out of Port of Spain, then everything above Park Street could be residential and everything below Park Street could be commercial. And at nights, Lord Harris Square and Woodford Square could be ringing with entertainment and families playing. We could put the food trucks down in Independence Square, and security and cleaners and benches and tables, and bring families out. And make Trinidad somewhere worth living again, and not just a place being looted by government. Not one single day goes by when the people really believe that the government, any government, is doing or has done a good job. We settle for praising a government for COVID-19 that took credit for the sun. An opposition leader decided to jump up and join the bandwagon and take that without understanding how that works. And all of that is just too pitiful to be funny. So we almost had a case today, if we believe the NCRHA, that we almost rented 2 tents for a month for $500,000. We still don't know if that did not take place. But there's nobody for me to call right now to say, go to Mr. Davlin Thomas and ask him for the quotation and the invoice of the person you did give the contract to. And until that is the case, this won't be a functional place. And there is a progressive empowerment party because somebody has to stand up to all the nonsense that is our reality. I'd like to thank everybody who joined us tonight at home and abroad. I'd like to thank Carolyn Seepersad-Bachan, my guest. It was an interesting and an exciting exchange. The viewers loved it, and I'm happy that the viewers enjoyed the show. But at the end of the day, we must take away something that makes us believe, full of hope, that there is a chance, the slightest chance, that we could take this failed and broken nation and make it a paradise. Until tomorrow, stay safe, Trinidad and Tobago.